and welcome to the DE Talk podcast. I'm really excited to chat with our guest, Elizabeth Jennings from the National Disability Institute, but I'm also excited to welcome Heather Hoffman from Recruit Rooster. This is a conversation I've been looking forward to since we began the podcast series. Today we are going to be talking all about women in leadership, why women make excellent leaders, the gaps that continue to exist, and what we can do to nurture, support, and help develop future female leaders. So let's start by sharing a little bit of our backgrounds and how we got into our roles. Elizabeth, why don't you share your background and story first? You've worked exclusively in the nonprofit space, I think?
Yes, that's correct, Candee. And first I want to give just a quick thank you to you and to direct employers for having me with you today and for your efforts to increase diversity in the workplace, including those efforts for people with disabilities. For the last 20 years, I have worked exclusively in the nonprofit sector. I've worked as a direct service provider for a local Goodwill, as a funder focused on community impact for United Way of Palm Beach County, and for the last 12 years at the national level for National Disability Institute, where I am currently the acting executive director. Early on in my career, I made a decision to work in the nonprofit sector because of the ability to focus on mission and to lead multiple partners towards solutions that positively impact people with disabilities.
Wow, it's funny. I've only been in the nonprofit sector for about 6.5 years and came from corporate America. But, if I had it to do all over again, I think I would have gone directly to the nonprofit space. I sincerely enjoy what we do here. So, Heather, continuing that conversation, what about you? Where did you begin and what is your current role with Recruit Rooster? You were part of the nonprofit and now you're not.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Candee. So I'm the Chief Operations Officer of Recruit Rooster, and really where I began, as I kind of pondered this question here, I grew up really in business. So that's really where I started my journey in the business world back when I was just a little kiddo. And out of college, this is Candee's actually favorite university. I went to Purdue University. I figured we would make sure to work in there. Boiler up. Went to Purdue and right out of college, I quickly became an entrepreneur. I've known since I was a little girl that I've always wanted to be in business. I then got into the corporate world back in the early 2000s and worked my way into sales and human resources, worked my way up the ladder into management and then into leadership. And I've been with direct employers now since 2012. And Recruit Rooster spun out of direct employers. We're a wholly owned subsidiary of DE back in 2018.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's been a fun story. And we absolutely love the name of that side of our business, Recruit Rooster. We have so much fun with that, and I think everybody thinks that we're staffing agencies, and we're not. So we have a great time with that. I guess I'll just give a little quick background of my own. I actually never really thought about going into business. I honestly thought I was either going to be a school teacher or a clinical psychologist. And here I am in corporate, or I was in corporate America for 30 years, and now in the nonprofit space. And interestingly enough, when I was in college, my mother and I went to Orlando, Florida, and visited our neighbors from when I was born there. And the man of the family asked me, he said, "Candee, what do you want to do when you graduate?" And I said, I think I'm going to probably end up teaching or going on to get my master's in psychology. And he said, either way, you need to decide if you want to be a small fish in a big pond or a big fish in a small pond. And when I was 18 years old, I didn't really know quite what that meant. And I spent 30 years as a small fish in a big pond in corporate America and was a member company of direct employers. And they contacted me to come here, and it was the best move I ever made. So to your point, Elizabeth, the nonprofit space is completely different, and I think it allows a lot of opportunity for people that don't really know how their abilities can divert from one area to another. And I think it's been a great opportunity for both Heather and me, I think.
I agree.
So I love how varied our paths have been, I truly feel like it's our life experiences that help mold us as leaders and shape our ability to inspire and encourage those around us. As women in leadership roles, it's really our job to not only lead the organization, but also set an example for up-and-coming women on our staffs and the industries we serve as well. So, Elizabeth, what motivated you to become a leader? And then, Heather, I'm going to ask you the same.
Sure.
When I thought about it, I thought I wasn't sure at first that I had a motivation to become a leader, but I was very fortunate to work for Goodwill that recognized that I had skills and encouraged me to apply for, and then I did receive a position to direct a federal grant. And that position really allowed me to flex some leadership skills and become a leader within the organization. There were many other grantees for the same project in our state. And once I got a taste of using my leadership skills among these multiple partners, I really was hooked. I saw that as a leader, you could have an incredible opportunity to make a unique difference, that you could focus more on macro issues and implementation as opposed to the one-on-one service delivery. And that ability to bring people together and guide them towards one focused solution is really what kept me in this leadership space for all of this time.
So, Elizabeth and Heather, when you answer the question, did you actually think, I know, Heather, you said you wanted to go into business. Mm-hmm. Did you actually think, someday I want to be a leader? So, Elizabeth, what about you? And then you add that to your answer, Heather.
I didn't actually know when I was young that the job I have now existed. I knew that I wanted to make a difference in a civil rights movement, and I had a very strong focus on fairness. And I think the way that I work is what grew those passions into being a leader. But it wasn't an intentional and deliberate path that I put myself on. It was more taking opportunities as they came and recognizing what I wanted to contribute and the different ways that I could make those contributions.
Interesting. Heather, what about you?
Yeah, for me, I would say, obviously we all have different upbringings. Mine was more of an instinct, not something that really evolved over time. And I mentioned earlier on that I grew up in business. Maybe I'll paint that picture a little bit more for you. My father was and still is an entrepreneur and has multiple businesses, and I'm an only child. And so outside of school at a very young age, my afternoons and evenings and weekends were spent in the business world, and I didn't know anything different. That was just, a regular life for me. And that is really where I started my love for the business world. And I was just involved in around leadership constantly. So it's more of a natural thing for me. And as obviously my career has progressed and, I started within sales and then worked my way up. But it's something that I not only value, but also really enjoy working with each and every one of what I like to call the roosters on the Recruit Rooster team. It's a privilege for me to be able to work alongside of them.
It is funny. Like I said, I never really thought, well, I really want to be a leader someday. But I had always done well in school, and I think leadership, I'm a huge proponent of doing the best job in the job that you have. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of times leaders just emerge from the roles that they hold, right, because you can tell who the smart workers are, the hard workers are, and they emerge because they can be counted on, they can, they can be relied upon and that sort of thing. So I guess that's kind of what happened with me. But this is going to be an interesting one for Heather. I'm going to ask you first, Elizabeth. And the reason I'll tell you that's going to be interesting for Heather is because we just, all of us on our leadership team here at Direct Employers just finished DISC profiles. So think about how you're going to answer that, Heather. And Elizabeth, I'm going to ask you what your leadership style is and to talk about how you lead your team as a result.
Sure. Now I'm very excited to hear Heather's response. I have a very collaborative leadership style. Here at NDI, I work hard to foster the empowerment of every staff member, from the folks who are doing the programmatic work to the folks who are doing administrative work. I want each person to lead their work and to support each other, and importantly, to use their practical wisdom to do what they believe is the right thing to do in the moment. Within our structure, I find opportunities for shared leadership of meetings and projects. We try very hard not to be very hierarchical because we want everyone to feel that they have power over the work that they're doing and the decisions that they're making. And then I make myself available to talk with staff about their work, what they're passionate about, and how they can use the connection between the work they're doing and the passions they have to motivate them for the extra push that it takes some time and maintain their engagement.
That's very
One
cool.
other thing I think, oh, thank you very much. Yeah, we have actually found this to be a really great strategy for success in preventing some burnout, is to look at what staff are passionate about and see how we can craft our work around those passions, because they are motivators for people to be even more innovative and work even harder than they already do.
All right.
So I wanted to point to one more piece of our leadership values here, and that is holding responsibility for the choices that we make, even when we're wrong, even when we make mistakes, to view all of those moments as just ways to fail forward, to acknowledge that we made a mistake, and to use it as a moment in time to learn from it, rather than feeling that it's a deficiency on anyone's part.
Well, I call that a learning opportunity or a teaching moment. So, so I agree with
Absolutely.
that. I agree with that philosophy. Heather, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo, what Elizabeth had mentioned there, the collaborative style. I think that we carry that we really do throughout Direct Employers and Recruit Rooster. So that's something that we share with you, Elizabeth. I would say, as far as my own personal leadership style, it's really evolved over time. I really try to keep positivity in mind. Some days that's easier than others, but any type of conversation that I'm having with staff, whether it be guidance or, constructive criticism, I try to keep that constructive component top of mind. And really, I mean, I feel like I'm hopefully one of their biggest cheerleaders when it comes to, motivating them and encouraging them to function throughout the day.
Is that right, Jordan? She's a rooster.
Yeah. Just for those listening, so we have a rooster employee sitting here with us, and then she can possibly comment on that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with the collaborative style, and I also, Elizabeth, to your point about having an open door, we kind of have a joke in my office about my door being a revolving door because people are always in and out, and even if my door is closed, somebody will knock on it,
That is very true.
But I also think part of that is because we're women. I don't know that I would knock on a man's office door and just say, "Excuse me, I want to come and talk to you." I've thought about that periodically. I think that might be something, and I don't think it's a sign of disrespect at all. I just think that there's more of an openness or more of an opportunity that people think they can just come on in. Mm-hmm. And I've thought about that periodically, that maybe you wouldn't do that if that were a man. But okay, next question. Elizabeth, I'm always going to pick on you first since we don't see you here. Are there certain qualities or traits that you feel have helped propel you forward?
I thought about this question quite a bit, and I think that there are definitely qualities and traits that leaders have or build in order to be successful in a leadership position. But more so, I thought about this moment in time several years ago when I purchased a magnet for the fridge here at NDI. And it says, "Failure is not an option." Mm-hmm. And I think that sentiment has aided me greatly. It propels me forward. It gives that mix of persistence and my deep core belief that if you work hard, if you have a strategic approach, if you're creative and a collaborative, and to your point, Heather, if you have a positive attitude, anything is possible. And when you work in the nonprofit sector, you have to do a lot of grant proposals. You have a lot of hard deadlines. You have to rein together a lot of people to move in one direction. And this concept that failure is not an option, that we just have to keep moving forward and getting it done, is something that I think has helped me greatly and helped all of us here at NDI to keep on trucking, just keep on trucking.
There's never a delay in the amount of work that we have in front of us, is there?
Yeah. And if I may, I'd like to kind of
Never.
comment on the failure is not an option. I love how you kind of coined that term there. For me personally, as part of my journey, failure has been an option, and what I've done is I've just tried really hard to learn from each and every failure. So. It sounds like you did a little bit of preparing yourself, Elizabeth. I did some too, and I jotted down, fail forward rather than, fail and revert. You need to learn from mistakes that are made, not only that, potentially you make yourself, but with those around you. I'm always looking to other successes and their failures and trying to absorb what it is they're doing and not doing that could have potentially made them better. And then apply that myself, so.
I wholeheartely agree. I think it's kind of like making people angry. I always say if you don't make anybody angry, you're not doing anything. There are times that you have to do things that aren't in maybe everyone's best idea of something that you've had to decide upon. One thing that I've learned, and it was kind of a tough lesson, and it was thanks to one of our senior leaders here. Shortly after I took over this role, he told me that I needed to stop being so defensive. And, it's one of those things that you don't really realize that you are defensive or that you have various shortcomings. And so my immediate response was, what do you mean? I'm not defensive. So it was, it was something that was constructive criticism. It was delivered in a positive way. I get that. But it's always hard to hear, but I've tried very, very hard to not be defensive. And it's tough. Sometimes I fall back into my old habits, but I do try to make sure I keep that new mentality moving forward. And it is kind of a challenge sometimes, but it's not necessarily a failure, but I do. You could consider that a failure and failing forward. So I think that's something that we all kind of share. So, Elizabeth, how did you reach your level of success given the workplace gender gap, especially among leadership?
I think I was consistent in three things. I always worked hard. I put in a lot of time and watched for opportunities to give extra. I worked closely with the leaders of each organization I was in, and other leaders in the community to learn from them and also to be a supportive collaborator with them. I felt that was really important. But I think the most important thing I've done is take ownership of my decisions. I have watched and been around many talented people who do great work, but they don't want to be left holding the bag as the decision maker. And I think that that's an important component of rising to the role of being a leader, is you have to be willing to make decisions, sometimes really hard decisions, and take ownership of those decisions, even when they turn out to be the wrong one. And that, I think, has made a huge difference for me.
Well, I think always, too, even decisions that maybe aren't the best at the time, as long as you can justify why you made them at the time and then, fix the problem. If you don't do anything wrong, how are you going to... What somebody told me one time is that if you're all perfect and you don't make any mistakes, it's going to be a pretty boring world. So, I think we have to have mistakes to help us be better, so. Mm-hmm. Heather, what about you?
Yeah, I share in Elizabeth's comments there. She stated, give extra. And my response to that, Candee, would be persistence and consistency with performance. Since we work so closely together, some of the skills that I have and that I try to apply on a daily basis. But for me, organization, consistency,
Heather
just that
is truly the most organized person I know.
And I have a love for processes. I really do. And where there's not a process, I will create. I'll create one. Yeah, but as my leadership style has evolved too. I believe that I've become more humble as the years have gone on for me, and I've also became more empathetic, towards my peers and the staff that reports to me. So I try to maintain that day in and day out.
Part of that, Heather, is aging.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Actually, one of my comments later on, I'm going to talk about my age. So,
see, it is good for us to be getting older.
It is, yeah, and to be transparent. You want to be transparent. Absolutely.
It's funny. Heather and I talk about this quite a bit because we are, for all intents and purposes, a couple of tech companies. And we love the fact that we're two females leading tech companies. And that's relatively unusual. And, we have about half of our leadership team is made up of females.
Right.
And so we find that to be pretty cool, especially in this space, and to have women as leaders. And I think we're respected leaders in our field as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think that it adds a lot of skills to the table.
Mm-hmm. I really do too. All right, so let's look at some facts. Women represent 50.8% of the U.S. population, and they earn more than 57% of undergraduate degrees, and believe it or not, 59% of all master's degrees. However, women only occupy 10% of top management positions in the S&P 1500 companies and constitute only 11% of the top earners in Fortune 500 companies. So for someone who has worked her way up through various positions, I see this as a problem, and I attribute it to unconscious or implicit bias. So how can we change the view of women in leadership roles and change the system to be truly inclusive and an equal playing field for both men and women? Elizabeth, you're up first.
Yeah, when I looked at this, Candee, I thought there's also new information that women now hold just over 50% of American jobs, excluding farm workers and the self-employed. And all of the efforts to have women enter STEM fields has really worked, as now 56% of the U.S. workforce for scientists and engineers under 29 years old are women. So I really considered that we have quite an interesting majority going on. And you ask a great question, which is, what are we going to do with it? I think to start, we need to speak up. We recognize that women do less negotiating for salary. We accept lower salaries than men. We're not necessarily trained on how to ask for what we want or really how to recognize our worth. And then we can feel some frustration with younger workers who come in and ask for pay that's out of scale, but they don't yet have the education and experience. So there is some nuance here that we need to train women on how to better negotiate, how to recognize their worth, and also support young women when they go a bit out of scale, how they can be on a path to earn what they want, and how they can better understand what's the right scale within your own organization. And I think part of that really starts with those of us who have access to pay scales and compensation packages, that we need to speak up. We need to be very clear and address inequity and be consistent in that. In my role here at National Disability Institute, I actually work with our Director of Finance. We assess compensation each time we look at increases in pay, and then we work across leadership to address any inequities that may exist. And that takes time, it takes diligence, it takes discretion, but it's really important. If we as women leaders don't demand pay equity for ourselves and our staff, I don't know who will.
I think you're right. I think there's a lot of people that are still getting used to women feeling comfortable in speaking up. But I think doing it in a respectful, knowledgeable, convincing way is obviously key to that. So, Heather, what do you think?
I have to say that's the D in my disc. Speaking up and making my opinion known, hopefully in a way where I have awareness. that constructive.
See, I've got the influencing, so I
Yeah.
can influence them that I need to make more money.
We're a good team, that's for sure. Well, I'll say, Elizabeth, I loved that you stated that we should really be supporting young women that are looking to get into leadership roles. And that's definitely something that Candee has done with me personally. So I think later on we're going to talk about other leaders that have inspired us, and she's definitely one that has inspired me and impacts me on a daily basis. So, but my response to that question would be show up. First you have to show up to the opportunity, and also you need to expect equal pay, and through that perform and prove that you're worth it.
Yeah, I think you're right. For me, it's about making our male counterparts our allies.
Yeah.
Oftentimes I look around in meetings and I'm literally one of only a handful of female leaders in the room, but I fortunately have a mindset related to partnership and inclusion and influencing with my DISC profile. But I'm a person that builds relationships easily. And I feel like I've been able to somewhat break through the glass ceiling and be invited to the table to be a part of some amazing conversations. What do you guys think? You feel like you're an accepted part of a group when you're in a meeting?
I do, absolutely. Yeah. I really do. Especially here, throughout DE, I think that we support women in leadership and very well. I think that we're delivering in that aspect. So,
Elizabeth, what about you?
I would agree. We have a large majority of our senior leadership here at National Disability Institute is comprised of women. And I really have to give a shout out to our founder and first executive director, Michael Morris, because it is under his leadership that so many women were brought in and promoted internally. So we did have a wonderful ally in Michael and continue to do so. But yeah, he's great. He's wonderful.
You know what? The first time I met him, the prior CEO of one of my corporate America positions, the CEO's name was Michael Morris, and it was like, wow. When I met your Michael Morris from National Disability Institute, it really took me aback. It was like, oh, there's another one, and both were great guys. So that's kind of cool. So anyway,
that's great.
Yeah, so I can honestly say we're living in a really interesting time where the topic of women in leadership is not being brushed under the rug, and I'm very excited to head up an organization that supports my leadership and Heather's as well. It's proven that time will not solve the gender leadership gap, only action will. So as leaders, we have the responsibility of creating an equitable workplace culture. So my question is, how can we do this in our own organizations?
Overtly, Candee. Overtly.
There you go. Yeah.
We have to be really intentional about this.
I think you're right. One thing we've been trying to do, and Heather, I think you'll agree, we've been trying to be a lot more transparent. Mm-hmm. We've tried to share, our future direction, and we have a pretty good mix here of men and women. And I think we've actually been hiring more women technical people, and that's a positive. But we have a lot of, our marketing department is all female, and we have a lot of females that are rising. And interestingly enough, Elizabeth, one thing I wanted to mention, we, Direct Employers is a 501c6, so we're a trade association. So part of our mission is to be there for our members, and one of Heather's clients actually called us customer obsessed. And I think a lot of that, and I'm not truly not trying to stereotype, but women tend to have that type of nurturing, background. So that's been very beneficial for us as well.
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's switch gears a bit. I know everyone has someone in their life that has helped mentor them or inspire them throughout their career. For me, it was Mary Kofer, and I'm going to have to send her a link to this. Yeah. She was my former boss at American Electric Power. And even today, she brings a smile to my face when I think of how she encouraged me to grow and challenged me throughout my career. She was one of those people that, honestly, she's still probably one of my closest friends. I could call her any time of the day or night, and she would be there for me. No question whatsoever. So who are some females that have helped shape your career? Elizabeth, we'll start with you.
I have actually been very lucky to be surrounded by female leaders in both my personal and professional life. I'm one of 5 sisters.
Oh, geez, my
Five
mom was
sisters
4.
born across 7 years. Yeah,
Oh,
mom
wow.
worked really hard. And my mom has a mantra of principles over personalities.
Hmm.
And
I like
she
that.
and my dad raised us to see ourselves as independent, smart, and highly, highly capable.
Hmm.
And when I entered my professional career, I found that that was fostered by several female mentors I had. Kathy Spencer at Goodwill, Alexandria Douglas Bartolone at United Way, Sharon Brent here at National Disability Institute. But one mentor really held the course with me across all of my jobs. Her name was Barbara Butts. She passed recently, very recently, and I find myself wanting to call her and talk to her, and instead asking myself, WWBD, what would Barb do? And I think that's the power of a good mentor, that their guidance stays with you even when they cannot be with you.
Well,
It's
is
really cool.
that is very cool, and isn't that what I say about Mary all the time?
About Mary, and I'll just share that we here at Direct Employers had the opportunity to meet Mary a few years back. She came to our annual
Yep.
conference, Deem, I think it may have been Deem 18?
17. I think.
17.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. And it was it was an honor to meet her and to finally put a face with the name and,
Yep.
and sharing some of the stories that Candee has,
That
shared
she
with us. Yeah.
went on and on sharing.
Yeah. It was fun.
Yeah. Everyone has to love her though.
Oh, yeah.
So-
She's great.
So who is your mentor, Heather?
Yeah. Well, as far as within the workspace, Candee, you're my mentor.
That's good to know.
Yeah. I mean, you're
Don't
actually
screw it
the
up,
first.
Candee.
You're the first female boss that I've ever had,
wow.
and yeah, you've been a great example of leadership for me. Another mentor of mine, I would have to say, is my mother, hands down. She's been a true example for me of leadership in our family. She spent many years assisting my father run his businesses while he was out traveling the world, and she did so in a successful manner. She's got an amazing heart and faith that I just truly admire. So,
Well, just to not slack my mother, I actually had notes that I was
Did
going
you?
Yeah, I honest to God, she was a strong and independent woman.
Yeah.
She back in the day when you said that somebody had to work, so my mom had to work. She raised me. My sister's 13 years older, and I was basically raised as an only child. And my mom worked, and I still had to go to school. And she was always there for me. She focused on what I needed. She had nothing, and she made my clothes a lot of times, and always made sacrifices for my success. And I have, Elizabeth, you said you were one of 5. My mom was one of 4. I'm one of 2. I have 2 daughters, so it's kind of like all girls. Now I have 2 grandsons, and I told my daughter I don't know what to do with them. I've got to learn how to occupy boys, which I'm babysitting for soon, which I dearly love to do. But it's I think a lot of it, interestingly enough, all 3 of us had strong parents,
it starts at
strong
home.
mothers.
It really does. Start
And,
at home, yeah.
and my daughter, I'm literally loving watching her raise my grandsons, because she's following in the same footsteps to a large extent. So I think we can all agree that mentors are very important in our lives. So one interesting point is that women may not always realize how poised for success they might be in leadership roles. So what do you think, both of you, are some qualities that make women great leaders? And I see one word that I've written down, Heather, that I know you just said too. So, Elizabeth, what do you think?
I think we've covered a lot of them. Humility. For me, I think women often have a mission to do something for the greater good. That can be very motivating and compelling. Dedication, courage of conviction. But what I most see in women that I don't as frequently see in men is this ability to see the strengths and talents of other people and to find ways to be supportive without taking over or diminishing the other person's power. I'm a student of positive psychology, understanding how to build self-efficacy, how to shift from, wow, you did a great job with that, to how did you come to decide to do it that way? How did you know that this would be the path we needed to take? To help people recognize the strengths that they're bringing to the table and the abilities that they have is something that I think I see more in the way women talk to other people than in the way men talk to them. And it's very powerful to me.
It is. Heather, what about you?
Yeah, be teachable. There's so much to learn. And so just to constantly have your eyes open and your ears open and to be able to absorb from those around you. And that dedication that Elizabeth alluded to, if you want something, you got to work hard for it.
I second what you just said about be teachable and continue to learn. My younger daughter made the comment one time that she really finds it difficult that people get to a point in their careers where they figure that they don't have to learn anymore because, they've already done everything they need to do. And I thought, wow, that to me is almost a first sign of failure. I mean, you always have something to learn, even if it's just on a personal level, it always makes you better.
Sure.
At least that's my opinion. So everyone has moments in their career where they are uncomfortable with growing and stepping into new roles. So Elizabeth and Heather, I'd like you to tell me about one of those moments and how leaving your comfort zone impacted your career.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. I had this moment actually about 6 years ago. Well, I've had this moment many times, but one that really struck out to me was close to 6 years ago. Michael Morris shared with me that he saw my potential for succeeding him when he came to the time of retirement. And while I was honored and humbled, I was really terrified. I remember standing in his office and saying, I don't think that I would want to have this job. And he told me, I understand, but I'm certain that you'll change your mind. And that comment really made me pause. I recognized he wasn't asking me what I wanted right now. He was asking me to figure out what I would want 5 to 10 years from now. And so instead of doubling down on my fear, I accepted the fact that I didn't know how to do the job and told him that my fear was based on the fact that I didn't know how to do his job, and that if he had this thought that I would need training, that I would need to build new skills, I would need to learn all the stuff I didn't even know I didn't know, especially around nonprofit management. And within a year, he named me as deputy director. And over the last 5 years, being in that role has really equipped me with the knowledge and skills I needed to step in last year as acting executive director.
Well, he obviously had faith in you. So, Heather?
Thank goodness he did, yes.
Saw something in her that she didn't necessarily see in herself at that point. Yeah.
Exactly.
Which is a great sign of leadership, right? He was a great leader. So for me, this would have been back in 2011, 2012. It was coming over to direct employers. At that point in my career, I was so successful in sales and management, it was scary to leave something that I had done such a phenomenal job at and venture on into the leadership world. So, some of the same feelings that Elizabeth had, it sounds like when she was taking on this new journey, just, fear of not being able to perform the job. There was a lot for me to learn. And, you have to kind of power through some of those feelings. And, my drive kicked in and my willingness to succeed. And I feel like it was such a great move. Again, just being teachable. If you're putting yourself in that position to be teachable, you can continually climb the ladder.
Well, interestingly enough, my experience was an assignment that Mary had given me, and I was going to do what is called an on-site compliance evaluation with the Office of Federal Contract Compliance Programs, and Mary taught me everything I knew about affirmative action. And I was going to do an on-site, and I did not feel prepared at all. And I said, finally, I was fretting for like 3 or 4 days, and I finally went into her office and I said, Mary, I honestly, I can't do this. I mean, and I was literally stumbling just like that. I said, I can't do this. And she put her pen down and she said, Candee, number one, I don't ever want to hear you say the word can't again. And number two, do you honestly think I would set you up to fail? And, you talk about the effect that those mentors have on us, but she had faith in me that I didn't have in myself, and I needed that confidence in me to be able to be successful. And one other time I had an audit after I had left American Electric Power and went to Cardinal Health, who I did have a couple of other female mentors there, Donna Mann and Nancy Shaw. And I had an audit there, and I called Mary to see how to handle it, and because they wanted some information, and I didn't know if I should send it. Well, she was on vacation. Can you imagine? And she didn't answer my phone. And I was like, well, lady, I mean, you could be, like waiting for Candee to call anytime she needed you, but I had to make my own decision, and I was successful. So she called me about a week or two later, and she said, hey, I'm sorry I missed your call. What did you need? And I told her, and I said, so actually I asked first how she would handle a situation like that. And she told me, and I said, yes, that's exactly what I had done. But I think I needed to figure out that I had it down. I knew what I needed to do through her teaching, and that was kind of my way then to realize that I've got it. Yeah. I can handle this on my own, She
may not have answered that phone call on purpose for you to have to be put in that position to make your own call,
I have thought about that. It's not. No. I still love you, Mary, if you listen to this.
We'll have to get the real scoop now that it's years gone, right?
Exactly. All right. So I've got just a couple more questions. What do you both do? Heather, I know to a certain extent just because I know your family, but Elizabeth and Heather, we all try to have personal lives outside of work. How do you both have, or how do you maintain a level of work-life balance that both supports your career aspirations and your personal life?
Well, this is a great question, I think. But when I struggle with this concept of a work-life balance because I get a lot of well-being from work. I really love the work that I do.
Me too, yeah.
It's important. There's a psychologist, Martin Seligman, who created the PERMA model of well-being. And for me, work covers that entire PERMA spectrum. It gives me positive emotions, engagement, positive relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. So I do have a rule that I set for myself, and I encourage other staff to adopt. We talk about it very openly. And my rule is that I monitor my well-being at work. If I'm not experiencing well-being, then I pause to kind of figure out what's going on. If it's after hours or I'm at the office on the weekend for something and I feel like I'm not experiencing well-being, I go home. If it's in the middle of the day, I might decide I need to get up, take a walk, just take a break, make a connection with someone. And this is the way I kind of balance it, that I have the things I do in my personal life that are fun and the people that I love and all of those relationships that I foster. But I don't deny that I really love being at work. And I just acknowledge that work is important to me. And that it's okay and healthy to take a step away from it when I want to engage in other things.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. You just make it sound very eloquent in the way
does.
that you describe it. It's like, when the weekend is coming, I'm ready for the weekend. And when the weekend is coming to a close, I'm ready for work.
Exactly. I honestly, I don't get upset on Sunday evening when I'm going back to work. And I was here on Sunday at the office.
To coming in and seeing everyone. I mean, you guys are like a second family. So,
But she does have two adorable young children, except they're Purdue fans. I'm
they
still
are
working
Purdue
on
fans.
them. Yeah.
And they make sure to tell Candee every time they come into the office office, they wear their attire that is supporting the university. For those of you that don't know, Candee is a diehard IU fan. So this is the one thing that we never can agree on, and we love to just throw it in each other's faces.
We're going to have our own old oak and bucket competition in our lobby this year, I guess, this fall. So,
but to that point, Candee, I do have a family at home and 2 young children, a son and a little girl, 11 and 5, and I've got an awesome support system. So I have a husband that's very supportive of my career. He has a career himself as well, but he supports me when I travel, and he's not afraid to cook, which I love. Oh, yeah. And then my mother is very active in our lives, and she's a caretaker before and after school, which is very helpful for me, so that I can leave early and get home late. But I just love being busy, and so that's one of the things that really drives me. Is that, I'm busy here at work, but I also love being busy at home. And had I not had that type of characteristic, I don't know that I'd be able to continue moving on. So it's a good thing that I like being busy. I can serve both purposes very well.
Well, and that's what, I'm fortunate because both my kids are grown and they've got their own careers. One is an elder law attorney and one is an athletic trainer. And so they're very busy in their careers, and I have a husband who's retired, so I can kind of come and go as I please, so that helps a lot as well. So this is probably going to be one of the toughest questions. What has been the most significant barrier in your careers? So I think I know how Heather's going to answer, but Elizabeth, I'm going to let you go first.
Sure. I think working in the nonprofit sector, the greatest barrier to my career has really been funding. And that's because we struggle with having the discretionary funds that we need to be truly innovative. So for my work personally, I want to test new interventions on resilience and overcoming internal barriers to employment that I believe will create a new body of work for me and for NDI, but also have an important impact on the workforce system and specifically on the employment of people with disabilities. And while it may not seem that it perfectly aligns, if we don't have the funding to do things we think are most innovative, it doesn't just stall our work, but it stalls what we can do in our careers. It stalls how creative we can be and how we can test our own limits. And so that, I think, is really my greatest barrier right now.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And so for me, I was kind of kicking this around this morning with Candee. My biggest barrier has been my age and how young I am. Mm-hmm. But, growing up in the business world, it's like I came out of the womb ready to do business. I've got 30 years experience at this point, but I'm just so young. And I'm older than 30, but I'm not.
She's not as old as me. Although I started when I was 12. So.
Yeah. But our previous executive director, Bill Warren, he was the Direct Employers founder. Mm-hmm. He used to kid around that he had socks older than me. So.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I wonder if they had holes in them. Well, you know what? Interestingly enough, my biggest or most significant barrier was, this is going to sound really bizarre, especially what my background is, and it was my color, and I'm a white female. I spent many years working with Mary, and she's a black female, and she was retiring, and they told me that I was perfectly qualified to take her job, but I wasn't the right color.
Wow.
And talk about making Mary angry beyond mm-hmm. belief. But you know what? I think that was probably a good step for me, because it wasn't long after that I left and went to Cardinal Health. And I think stuff like that, when that happens, I think, made me a little stronger and made me, I think, look inward at what I can do mm-hmm. and what I know and what I am capable of. And I honestly think I took that well. It was kind of one of those failures, but
in your eyes.
Exactly. But I do believe that is probably kind of the impetus to where I am today. I really do believe that. So it's interesting, the different types of barriers that we've all had to face. And I think any successful person, male or female, has had some type of barrier in their background. So, okay, last question. How do you think females can differentiate themselves in the workplace? We work with a lot of men, a lot of other females as well, but how can we, and I mean all females, how can we differentiate ourselves?
I've got a fun answer to this one, if you don't mind.
No.
So I say let your skills shine with a big exclamation point. I think that we as women, we have unique skills and abilities, and there's definitely a need for us. So keep that in mind.
Well, and I thought mine was very simple: make a difference.
Yeah.
And that's, Elizabeth, kind of what you've been saying too. Make a difference, and don't just let your presence be something people take for granted, but make a positive difference is what I should say. Elizabeth, what do you think?
Yeah, when I thought about this, my mind really went to psychological safety in the workplace and new research that's demonstrating that, when people are afraid at work, they aren't as cognitively sharp, they're demotivated. And I was thinking about how women can differentiate themselves by looking at how they handle power, the power that you have right now, and how you can handle additional power in a way that's going to be very thoughtful. I think people want leaders that they can trust, and that trust includes being able to speak up, question decisions, make mistakes without being mistreated or punished. As we noted, when people make mistakes, it's an opportunity for everyone to learn. And so this not feeling safe at work can be really a drain on people. So women can really take hold of a new space in workplace culture where they can be good stewards of power by being conscientious of their approach, responsive to the reactions of staff, which you noted earlier, Candee, and open and flexible to the idea that we as a leader may need to change so that we can be what our staff needs, and be making sure that just the issue of having a position of authority doesn't create an unintentional and unwelcomed power dynamic.
I agree. And one thing, and you kind of hinted towards this, and I think women leaders do a good job at this, and that's managing the individual. So many people think that you manage, a team and you manage everyone the same.
Yeah, the group.
Yeah, and you have to manage the individual.
So many personalities.
Exactly. And it's like I said at the very beginning, if everybody was the same, it'd be a pretty boring world.
Yep.
So if we were all perfect. And my last comment is, I think it's important to let people know that it's good and expected for them to bring their whole selves to work, and their authentic selves to work. I think it kind of goes along, Elizabeth, too, with what you've been saying about how you treat the employees at the National Disability Institute. But we want to have a collaborative environment. We want to have people feel comfortable being who they are. And I see that with Heather and the roosters. We have roosters running around all over the place. So I want to thank Elizabeth Jennings and Heather Hoffman for joining me today. I'm truly proud to work alongside both of you ladies. There truly comes a point in your career where it's really not about you, but how you engage and empower others. And I think we all can agree on the importance of continuing this conversation. Learn more about each of us by connecting on LinkedIn, or we will include info about each of us in a short blog post following this podcast. Thank you again for tuning in to another episode of the DE Talk podcast. With so many great topics to cover, be sure to follow Direct Employers on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, and subscribe to the DE Talk podcast to receive notifications of new episodes available each month. Thanks for listening, and this is Candee Chambers with Direct Employers. I appreciate you being a part of our podcast.